Good morning and welcome back to Mental Health Mondays. I'm Angela Brayshaw.
And I'm Jim Brayshaw.
Today's topic is anxiety, the thief of peace. What we need to know about anxiety is it is Canada's most common mental health condition.
And it seems to be growing month after month.
So what do we know about anxiety? Can we talk about the definition about it? Because generally it is about uncertainty, but something happens to the brain. And so knowing the definition helps us first understand.
It's so much about the brain, and our anxiety is a threat response to something perceived in our brain, right, as a real legitimate threat in the here and now. And it sends off a storm of activity, and it is very, very real.
Yeah. So we know stress is external, but anxiety is experienced internally. It could be an external that induces that anxiety, but it also could just be our own thoughts or feelings at the time or what we're experiencing.
Yeah, and it kind of sneaks up on people as well. We often don't know when an anxiety episode is coming. But this storm that's sent by the brain, it's really a storm of chaotic activity. And it's something that we can't just stop with a switch.
No, it's known as the fear network because the flight, fight, or
freeze
syndrome happens to the brain during an anxiety attack or during anxiety that's prolonged.
You may have heard it called the F3 system in the body. And when we see these issues going off in our brain, we have this legitimate response. And people wonder during an anxiety issue or attack, why am I tremoring? Because my basal ganglia is getting a misfire.
Yeah.
The amygdala has registered a fear, and now it's starting to fire in a chaotic fashion.
Yeah, so what's happening to my breath? My breath usually gets heightened, or I'm breathing faster. I might get flushed. I feel red, or I start sweating. That activation is literally the thalamus and the locus coeruleus kind of chaotically firing back and forth, saying, send physiological signals that say I'm in anxiety.
Yeah, there's a real threat here. There's the storm of activity to try to defend itself, but it's really a failed effort for our brain to do it because it's misfiring with chaotic. The hypothalamus itself, what is it doing? It activates that stress response. And the frontal cortex, which we'll talk about a bit more, is distorting the cognitive interpretation.
Yeah, so it's hard to make decisions during an anxiety moment or persistent anxiety.
And what does the hippocampus do? Is it connecting a memory to what?
To the fear that the brain is interpreting. It's saying danger, threat response, on board. On
board threat response. And now we often end up in this precognitive versus cognitive realm where a person normally functions in the cognitive where we think about our response. But if you jump out of the closet and startle me,
the body is not a fan of surprises at all, which is why you maybe have an anxious response.
In the precognitive version. So if I were to have a cognitive response, so I see a threat, my hippocampus and hypothalamus register it, and they send it through to my frontal cortex where I can do that higher level of thought and make a decision. Oh, it's just Ange scared me. But if it's precognitive, it skips the cognitive version of making a good decision. I might just lash out and punch someone. I would hate to do that, but it's possible.
Yeah, and that is literally the F3 response, the fight, flight, or freeze syndrome. Some people freeze, some people fight, and some people run. That is just normal for the brain.
So here's what would have worked in that situation. Ever had anxiety and somebody tells you to calm down?
Yeah, this is not supportive nor helpful in any way, measure, or form because that person who's experiencing the anxiety wants to calm down themselves. They're trying to, in every capacity, their brain is firing all of these things and they know they want to calm down.
Yeah, if you've ever had an anxiety attack, if you could stop it, you would.
Yeah, exactly.
Saying calm down makes it worse, in fact.
It does.
Now, because I have somebody else taking control of me in a really negative way.
So there's so many triggers of anxiety and all of them are valid. No matter what they are, they're valid. It can be anything from expectations, time management, debt, work, stress, health. All of these are valid.
And more we're encountering people that have anxiety over sleep. which makes sleep worse. My sleep is poor because of what's been going on locally, regionally, globally, nationally, or in relationships or in work. And then I get anxious about going to sleep, and it makes it even harder. These are the many, many triggers of anxiety, and triggers are different for everybody, but real for everyone who is experiencing anxiety.
Yeah, and never more before than as a globe we're experiencing this together. Even though we're alone, or maybe we isolated, we are all experiencing some level of uncertainty right now.
Yeah, but is there something we can do about it? I think there is, and there's an acronym. You may be a fan of acronyms, or maybe you're less of a fan of acronyms, but there's one we know as the BRAVE way.
Yeah, and it's just easy to remember, right? So B, what is my body response? What is my body doing right now? Well, it is literally interpreting, my body is saying, there's a threat on board. It sends these surging chemicals to my brain to say, threat, threat, threat.
So knowing what your body's doing is a great place to start when we are experiencers of anxiety.
Yeah.
And then realistic thinking is important. Realistic thinking doesn't mean I minimize or unvalidate my own experience.
Yeah.
It is the kind of thinking that says, okay, this anxiety, it's happening. It's not going to kill me. Sure, it could be a safety threat or a safety risk if I'm doing high risk work. But right now, my body's having a false alarm. That's realistic. If I know that going in, then I can retain that, and that may help me navigate through.
Yeah, and I do know people that process this way by saying, okay, my body's doing this, my brain's doing that, I can't unchange it, which is the next step in that BRA. When we accept that we can't unhinge the adrenaline that's going off in our brain, we can't stop it, then that's part of slowing that threat response down, is just accepting this is happening to me.
So my adrenaline and stress hormones have been released. I can't unrelease them.
Yeah, accepting that helps us go into the V.
Yeah, validation. What a huge piece this is. If I am experiencing anxiety, or you are, and you're able to do this, validate yourself. This is so uncomfortable. I hate this. This is no good. I don't want this to be happening, even though it is. You're being honest with self, but you're validating. Yeah. You're not judging yourself, but that's different. Validating and judging are different. We need a bit of self-compassion when we're experiencing anxiety, because we're often worried about what outsiders are seeing.
Exactly. And so that lends us to the E, which is we want that anxiety attack or anxiety response to stop. So E is the ending. How do we get to the ending? Well, we simply say, it's not my job to stop my brain right now or to end it. My job is to ride this as smoothly as I possibly can to the point where that F3 response, which is the sympathetic nervous system fully engaged.
Yes.
What do we want to do? We want to change it to the
parasympathetic nervous system. And that one is known as the rest and digest. It's way different than the fight, flight, or freeze. And in fact, your body is in that F3 mode. So when Angela talks about moving from a sympathetic to parasympathetic, we can do some breathing perhaps.
Yeah, because it's the easiest thing. We don't have to go buy it. It's right there with us. And if we can remember in that moment, hey, my breath is what I have control over. That's the first step to ending that anxiety attack that could end up in pounding headaches or whatever triggers that happen after that. So we want to make sure that we solidify that by taking our breath, saying, I have control. Can I do some deep breathing in that moment to get that? What is the nerve that we want to trigger in that deep breathing?
So the vagus nerve goes to your 10th cranial nerve up in your brain. And when we do deep belly breathing, it actually stimulates that to tell your 10th cranial nerve, let's engage the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, and disengage the sympathetic nervous system. It's an amazing, almost a magical piece of work, the vagus nerve connected to the 10th cranial nerve. Deep breathing is one of the best self-remedies for anxiety when it's coming on. Even when it's slight anxiety, it's great to have it. You can start by breathing if you recognize I'm feeling anxious.
And so there's many other different techniques that people use, and that's just one in helping end an anxiety attack. So Thank you for joining us today on Mental Health Monday, and we hope you have a really good day.
Yeah, if you have any questions, email them to the moderator and we'll be happy to answer them for you. It's been really great to sit with you on this Mental Health Monday.
Thank you.